Welcome to the programme this Monday evening. First tonight, climate change activists who've been causing chaos on motorways in and around the capital over recent weeks clashed with motorists today as they turned their attention to some of London's busiest commuter routes. In defiance of the government's attempts to stop them, they blocked the Blackwall Tunnel and Wandsworth Bridge, amongst other areas. Police arrested dozens of protesters. In a moment, we'll talk to a spokesperson for Insulate Britain after this report from our transport correspondent, Tom Edwards.
She's in the ambulance. She's going to the hospital in Canterbury. Do you think I'm stupid?
At the Blackwall Tunnel, this driver is trying to get through a line of protesters. She says she's trying to reach her mother, who's on her way to hospital.
How can you be so selfish?
For 3 weeks, Insulate Britain have been targeting London's roads and motorways. The tactic: lie down on the tarmac or glue themselves to it. This morning, there were protests at 4 busy locations.
This is my 7th arrest. I do not want to be here anymore. Why am I here? Because we're not getting a statement from our government that we've asked for over 2 months. Please listen to us.
This was Hanger Lane gyratory. There, Malik was caught up in the disruption. He's a dentist and had to cancel appointments.
Do you have any sympathy with Insulate Britain?
No, not at all. So I'm all for protecting the planet, reducing our carbon footprint, but it's just caused such a huge amount of inconvenience. And it's, I mean, just driving past, if you see a row of cars, and I'm sure in those cars you'll have NHS workers trying to get to hospitals, emergency doctors, but it seems that they have no consideration for that, and they've just blocked everything off just to make a point. And the point is a valid point, but there must be a better way around it.
The group wants the government to commit to insulating the country's homes, which it claims are the least energy efficient in Europe. The government has tried injunctions to stop the protests, threatening prison sentences and fines, but that hasn't stopped them. Further legislation is now planned, which could for those involved mean months in jail or unlimited fines.
Minister, is it right that people should be pulling Insulate Britain protesters out of the road?
Well, I think we need to make sure our roads are running, don't you?
Drivers have started trying to remove the protesters themselves. At the moment, the authorities, though, continue to struggle to prevent the demonstrations. Tom Edwards, BBC London.
Let's pick up on some of that with Liam Norton, who's a spokesperson for Insulate Britain. Good evening to you. We heard motorists there saying, look, I'm losing sympathy, or I need to go to the hospital, let me pass, or there's an ambulance, please get out of the road. However valid the cause, you must see that your actions are losing public support and becoming counterproductive, aren't they?
I think there's lots of footage over the last few weeks of us moving for ambulances in this campaign, and that's the policy in this campaign. But I agree with you that the public are becoming increasingly frustrated, and I agree with them, and I completely understand why that's the case. And we're asking, why is the British public being subjected to this endless dithering from our government? They could end this immediately by making a statement or fulfilling what they're saying they're going to do in terms of court action or arresting us, etc.
OK, I'm just going to pick up on that in a moment. But first, just to go back to what you were saying about London Ambulance, because there has been a plea from them tonight saying, please let our crews pass, it can cost lives. And you're saying that it is part of your policy to allow that to happen. But when queues build up, they clearly can't. And they're, ambulance crews are saying, look, a delay in getting to someone can cost lives. Do you accept that you are putting lives at risk?
Well, I think the London Ambulance Service is an incredibly professional organisation and understands ways to deal with traffic jams. It deals with traffic jams every day. But one of the things that we have to start talking about is why are people sitting in the roads, Riz? Why is that happening? And let's look at the reality of the situation that we currently find ourselves in. We're looking at the former Chief Scientific Advisor to the British government saying that what we do in the next 3 to 4 years will determine the future of humanity. He's saying that civilization as we currently recognise it will collapse within a few decades. We're seeing reports from credible organisations such as Chatham House, who define themselves as to help people, societies and government understand and
Liam
adapt
Norton,
to seismic change.
You make your point clearly there, but in terms of going back to these protests, the government won't engage. The protests are clearly not working. We've mentioned that, you know, running onto motorways and things are putting lives at risk. What does it achieve? Surely there is a better way to make your point.
Well, no, but what I was going to say was that the Chatham House, what their report is saying is that this is a line from their report. At the current trajectory in terms of emissions, if they do not come down, 10 million people a year will experience heat stress exceeding the survivability threshold.
Okay.
Do you understand what the survivability threshold is jargon for?
We are listening to the point that you make, Liam Norton, but we're talking about the actions that are happening on the roads today and have happened for the past few weeks. And you want the government to make a statement. They're not engaging. In fact, ahead of a conference speech, the Home Secretary has said clearly, we will not tolerate guerrilla tactics that obstruct people going about their daily business. So if it is not having an effect and the police are warning that, look, this is putting lives at risk, I'm asking, are you going to continue these tactics?
I'm talking about putting millions of lives at risk, and you continually try to evade the subject. Why is that? Why don't you want to hear about the 10 million people that are going to fry to death in 10 years if we don't bring emissions down? And what Insulate Britain are talking about is the absolute basic and minimum that this government should be doing. We've got a sensible plan. It's going to give best value for money in terms of reducing emissions.
Okay.
It's going to create hundreds of thousands of meaningful jobs, and it's going to bring millions of our citizens out of fuel poverty
so,
if we go into a fuel crisis.
No one is suggesting that this isn't a valid cause, and I'm afraid we do have to leave it there, but we would like people to have their say on social media. We appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Riz. Cheers.
And do have your say on social media. We know some of the platforms are down at the moment, but very keen to hear from you on this. Plenty more ahead this evening, including